It's episode 251 of the Cassius Morris Show. Thanks for tuning in to this brand new edition of the podcast. It's good to be back in action. I feel like I'm constantly updating things and coming on here and saying we just made some changes, but yes, we just made some more changes. As I mentioned on social media, I've been wiring in a new setup, and this isn't a setup change that you can see, like we have the set locked in, but the actual setup, the way I'm hardwired in, has all changed this past week. I didn't really have a weekend, to be honest. This past weekend was just the streams. We did 2 streams on Friday. We are off the Wi-Fi grid and we're wired in for these streams. So the live music reactions are going to be sick. There's going to be no lag, because as I'm bringing guests on, I'm discovering there's a ton of new aspects about streaming that I didn't really know. And like I've said on the stream, this was just something I tried spur of the moment one time that I thought it would probably be a one-off. Listening to your music live, and people really dug it, so I started doing it every weekend. And now as we're trying to make it more cool, add more features, we're coming up against some hurdles, which makes sense. I remember hearing Elon Musk talking about starting companies or really starting any new effort, and one of the things he mentioned was that when you start a new effort or a new project, whatever, the first step is lots and lots of excitement, and then the next step is lots and lots of problems. So we've passed the initial excitement stage for the stream. Now we're at the point where we're coming up with those issues and we have to get our shit together, man, and I'm on it quick. Now, I've been so wrapped up with the stream this week and getting everything together technologically, that I've been completely ignoring the news. And it appears that Young Thug and Gunna are in some serious legal trouble. The 2 rappers were charged with conspiracy to violate the RICO Act on May 9th, and ever since then, things have been looking really, really bad for YSL Records. Just days later, after these indictments came down, they lost one of their associates, Lil Keed, who was on the record label as well. He passed away in sort of mysterious circumstances. So things are really not looking good for Young Thug and Gunna. Now, these boys are singing about Pushin' P. Who would have thought they were actually literally Pushin' P, whatever P actually is? If I was making rap music while running a criminal enterprise, I would be going the Kanye route and doing Christian albums. I'd be on my knees praying, I'd be singing that Donda, Donda, Donda. You could not pay me enough to talk about selling drugs if I was actually selling drugs. Nonetheless, this entire situation is very, very sad and just another sad letdown in the world of hip-hop coming in 2022. I don't know how many, deaths and arrests and tragedies the fans are going to have to go through, but at the end of the day, it's a very, very sad thing, and prayers out to everybody involved, man. At the end of the day, the justice system is going to do what it does. I'm curious to see this trial. I'll probably, pop on and watch parts of this trial as it's going on, as it progresses, but definitely curious to see. Now we're going to jump into a segment called Ask Reddit, where we read some of the best questions and answers from the site itself. This question asks, what's the weirdest compliment you've ever received? Your oral cavity is so wonderful to work with. My dentist. You have a cool left ear. All I could think was, what's wrong with the right one? Was told I have a beautiful brain while doing a paid MRI study. My girlfriend in college once said that she wished she had legs like me. You're surprisingly nimble for a fat guy. Nice stream, bro, while I was peeing in a bathroom at Chicago O'Hare. My therapist likes you. They think you're a good influence. What's the weirdest compliment you've ever received? Let me know in the comments. Today's guest on the podcast is Joel Hoekstra, of course, guitarist of Whitesnake. Pleasure to have Joel on the show. It's been a little while in the making, but we wanted to do it surrounding the Whitesnake tour. I caught up with him right before the Whitesnake farewell tour kicked off, and it was great to chat with him. Make sure to go follow Whitesnake on tour as well if they're coming to a city near you. Lots of cool stuff coming from Joel in the band, and without further ado, let's hop into my conversation with Joel Hoekstra.
Great to be here. Thank you for taking the time out.
No doubt. I was taking a look at some of the new Whitesnake press photos. Super cool collection. I'm just wondering, how long does a shoot like that take, like during the day?
Wasn't that long. Kat is fast. Some photographers take longer than others. She's pretty quick. I would say maybe considering individuals with everybody and the group photos with a couple different looks, say an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that.
Wow. That's pretty quick.
Yeah.
Is that a part of the job that you enjoy, or is that the interviews, the photos, or is that sort of like extra work on top of it, or do you just enjoy all of it?
No, I mean, I enjoy it. I think it's fun taking all the band shots and stuff like that. And it's certainly nice to have for keeping fans interested in the digital age that we're in with, online and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think it's a valuable part of trying to have a musical career is have an online presence and stuff like that counts.
Yeah, especially nowadays. The Whitesnake farewell tour, this leg is going to kick off in Dublin May 10th. What's the first thing that runs through your mind when I say Whitesnake farewell? Because obviously it's not your personal farewell. You got plenty of different projects going, but I'm curious how you feel about this.
I haven't been too weepy about it just yet because I think we're looking at a long year here this year, and everybody's anxious about whether or not the world will hold itself together in more ways than one. And obviously I'd have TSO in November, December, and I don't think we'll be able to hit all the territories on the Whitesnake farewell tour this year. So that means we'd probably have it next year as well, and possibly TSO next year. So as I was saying, I mean, that's for a musician to know what they're doing for the next couple of years is pretty good in this business, and not to be like, and David's really only talked about it one time at rehearsal. I think we've been more in the mindset of we're all just really happy to see each other again right now because we haven't been together in a couple of years. So during COVID and everything. So that's more where the mindset has been.
So, I mean, when David mentions it, obviously you can't speak for him, but I mean, does he seem to be more happy about it? Or, I mean, is there really, like you're saying, is it not even really discussed yet? Because maybe it'll come up more towards the end.
He really only mentioned it once to me during rehearsals where he said, this is definitely it for me, though. This is my last run. He's like, I'm not going to do what some people do and keep on going and say, So, but I do think that we're probably looking at next year as well for it. But I think, that's, as I said, that's pretty good. It's hard to get too panicky or nervous or sad about it right now when you're like, man, that's 2 years off. Like we need to get through these 2 years.
We're far from farewell right now, right?
I'm more like, dude, am I playing the set well enough yet? Like, let me rehearse it a little in the room. That's where my mindset is.
No, that totally makes sense. I mean, how about physically and even mentally in terms of staying in performance shape? I'm always curious. I mean, especially as someone with so many different projects, how do you keep yourself in performance shape mentally and physically?
Oh man. I mean, I used to be like a constant in the gym guy. And somewhere along the line, I hit this patch recently where I started working so much that I'm like a constant work guy. So that the work kind of lasts all day. And also I think, the COVID thing is enough that it kind of keeps me out of like these, you get on the road and go into the hotel gym seems like a bit of a hot spot or something,
Yep.
Just when you get out with everybody, you don't want to be the person that picks it up because you wanted to just go to ride on the stationary bike. So to be honest, I've just been watching my diet more and just kind of like working a ton. That's kind of been the way things go. I mean, I get to the room, I've been teaching from in my hotel room even during this rehearsal process, teaching lessons and doing interviews. And, I have sessions kind of waiting and stuff like that I need to get to. And so I always seem to have something going.
Yeah, so many different things. I mean, is it a big difference with the touring now, sort of trying to avoid going too many places since COVID, or is it just minor differences?
It was the only thing that I've done that's major has been last November, December, being out with TSO, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, for those that don't know. And that was interesting. It just shows how quickly things can change because we were out and things were I'm going to make it through this like unscathed. This is going to be amazing. We had no positives on our side, and then suddenly the Omicron thing blew up, right? And by the last day of the tour, I think we had 26 positives on our side, mainly because the crew and the band are so big with TSO. I don't know what we are aside, but it's like 100 people or something. But I mean, 25% of the people basically had COVID. Like we just made it through. I mean, it was like the wheels were coming off the wagon, in that last couple of days of the tour. So it's funny how things can change quickly these days with it, and you just don't know. And that's the main thing, is that it makes everything really unpredictable. So I always preface everything with, if the world holds itself together,
We'll have to see if it does.
Yeah, I know. And that's not even, counting in everything that's going on, geopolitically with all the war and everything like that, So, let's just hope everybody comes to their senses and we can enjoy some good old fashioned rock and roll here on planet Earth, man.
Amen. I love that. And, I always hear from artists one of two things: either this whole climate of the world is for them distracting and makes it difficult to focus, or it energizes positively and gives them ideas. I'm curious, do you have either one of those things, or do you just completely not factor it in either way?
COVID for me just became like another kind of busy. I found that, the main thing, that my philosophy of being productive every day and all that just continued straight on. So yeah. I kind of went with the virtual teaching thing, 30 students a week. But I did master classes, like online, virtual, for Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp and some other schools and whatnot, and made my record that last Joel Hoekstra's 13 running games. Did tons of sessions for people, played on recordings, played on this new Iconic album that's just starting to see the light of day now. The first single's out. Did all kinds of collaboration videos, the ones with Dino Jalusic and Mike Portnoy, where we did Jane and Foreplay Long Time. And let's see, I did Abracadabra with Arnel Pineda from Journey and Billy Sheehan. Nice. And so, stuff like that, like staying out there. But it felt like every day was like a teach 5 or 6 lessons and then do a session. And like by the time you're done, it's like, man, I've been playing guitar like 8-9 hours today. And that kind of felt like every day during COVID.
Yeah.
Cameos, wow. That was another thing I took on, during that. Nobody was doing that, right? Like leading into, well, maybe a few people, but like that blew up during COVID. Everybody started to do that because people wanted to shout outs and all that stuff. So yeah, I ended up doing a lot of those during the COVID period, man. There was, I don't even know how many I've completed at this point in time. It's a lot, hundreds and hundreds.
What's the most common thing fans ask you to do? Like, is it a shout out for a family's birthday or something? Like, what's the main thing?
Yeah, lots of happy fans of either TSO or Whitesnake, or people that have followed me for a while and just want like a happy birthday for somebody in their family, or like a congratulations or a Merry Christmas, or stuff like that. Common sense. So I got a lot of happy birthdays together, and for He's a Jolly Good Fellow, and
nice.
Play a little play a Whitesnake riff into that or something, and real quick, and just
wish it fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's all in good fun. Doesn't hurt anybody to do that, and it's nice to connect with the fans and have that. Keep that up. I try to keep that up on the social media thing too. The social media thing almost seems worse during COVID for some reason. That seemed to be more enjoyable a couple of years ago, being on tour. Maybe that'll come back for me, getting out with Whitesnake for this long run here.
Yeah. Is that the main reason you lost the appeal to socials, or what was the main aspect?
I don't know. I just I guess because there's, more going on in the world that people like to argue about. And it's like just a bummer, you open up the social media thing and there's like, I was opening this up to see what my friends were up to, or I wasn't opening this up to listen to the world argue with.
Exactly.
Argue with it.
Well, I've heard they've changed the algorithms too, to where it pushes negativity now more so, apparently, because it keeps you on longer for some reason.
True? I don't know. I try to really limit mine to just kind of posting what's happening with my career, and that's it. Not really get into, I don't know. I know everything about what the world needs to do to solve all its problems, because Lord knows I certainly don't. I hardly know enough to be like a decent enough guitar player and do what I do for a living. So I'll leave that to seemingly all the other people in the world
But
who have
everyone on
an
Facebook is an expert, right?
That's what I mean. Yeah, I know. I was thinking my next album should be called "Everybody Knows Everything" because
Yeah, everybody knows everything.
that seems to be the days that we're in right now. Whereas like everybody's like, "No, it's this," and it's like, man, I don't know. Maybe I seem to be headed in the other direction with all that. Like, so I mean, I've always been that way with social media, with trying to keep it just about like what I do and people arguing about personal beliefs and stuff like that just seems like it's not my cup of tea.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because I think I
100%.
recognize the fact that somebody else might be right. I might be wrong. I certainly don't claim to have anything figured out.
Everyone's equally as passionate about their opinion too. So it's like right, wrong. At the end of the day, we all feel it just as much. So, I mean, one thing that you mentioned was the amount of guitar you actually play like day by day, especially when you're teaching. At that point, do you carve in extra time, and especially after so many years, to practice still, or is that considered the practice at this point, and you don't need that?
I think, the teaching is great, I think, for maybe analyzing some of what I had been doing and maybe refreshing some things. There are times where I am challenged a bit and have to think about things. And then there's times where it's just strictly maybe enough to kind of keep a little bit of the physicality there. I think all the time you spend with it is practice.
Right.
However, I would say more benefit comes from like all the sessions that I did and all that, working on pushing my playing to do, actual recording of music or writing of music. And that's definitely, that there's definitely another level there with that than teaching.
Yeah.
But I enjoy the teaching thing. It's cool, it keeps me on it. And but all of that put together, you got to find some kind of combination thereof. But it certainly doesn't hurt to like. I did that for years in my 20s, dude. That was like my 20s.
Yeah.
I used to teach 70 students a week during that whole
Wow.
decade, from the time I was probably 21 to 30.
Where was this in New York?
Suburban Chicago is
Okay.
where I grew up. So, and then I would basically only take off when I had gigs, and teaching is what allowed me to kind of build my career. And then, as luck would have it, I mean, I didn't really do it for about 20 years, and then it saved my ass during COVID. I mean,
Wow.
I could have easily watched everything just kind of go away, like anything I'd worked hard to save, and not
Like
that
a
I
lot of
live,
people, right?
not that I live lavishly, but I live in a very expensive city. I live in New York City, and it's like you can spend $100 just like walking out your front door.
Yeah, to blink, it's $100.
Right? Exactly, dude.
It's insane, but I mean, it's so cool that you have that going. I mean, with the TSO stuff, how different is that to sort of the Whitesnake process, and sort of how long is tour rehearsals and all that for that project?
So TSO is, I would say, that's something that's, you devote yourself to Trans-Siberian Orchestra, to the brand itself, and essentially what ends up being being verbalized as the show. When we're in rehearsals, we're always talking about the show.
Right.
So it's not necessarily like about, I'm not on a T-shirt for them per se, or I'm not actively involved in writing their music, but it's something that I'm honored to be a part of. It's
Right.
it's an amazing production. It's a touring machine, playing for huge audiences, and the guys in the band are, my dearest friends. I've been doing this now for 12 years with those guys. So, I mean,
Amazing.
it's I'm honored to be a part of it, but in terms of how it's different than Whitesnake, Whitesnake's a little bit more of a traditional band. There's more on me, and that you've got 6 or now it's 7 people on stage.
Yeah.
But even so, I'm one of the
Crowded up
7,
there.
as opposed to TSO, which is a much larger situation in terms of number of people and but you still have your moments to shine. Everybody's got their
Right.
moments to shine in TSO. You just gotta have to lay back and wait for that to happen and realize it's all about the show.
Collectively.
Right, yeah. But I'm lucky to be a part of either one, man. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, if you said to like the 11-year-old me first picking up the guitar that I could do either one of those, I'd be like, you're kidding, right?
Insane, right?
Yeah.
Who were the
So
bands you were listening to at that time, 11-year-old you?
11 was very, very just basic, like hard rock, heavy metal. AC/DC, Black Sabbath, Ozzy, Iron Maiden, Scorpions.
The essentials.
Those were the very beginnings, like of the bands that I listened to. And I'd even throw in there early Def Leppard, but I'm talking like High and Dry before they
Okay.
even before Pyromania. But they were in there pretty early. I was listening to Def Leppard early. And then some of the other bands came more late '80s for me. Like if you're asking when I started listening to Whitesnake, it like every other U.S. kid, it was kind of like you heard a little bit of Slide It In when that
Right.
record was out, and then the '87 album was just like
Explosion.
yeah, an explosion that I absolutely wore that one out, man. Listened to that every day for like months.
So what was it like when you first got like sort of in the studio with David Coverdale? And I mean, how did that whole process go for you to really even land it?
Yeah, I mean, when they needed somebody, I passed on some video links to Reb, and he forwarded them to David, and I didn't really hear anything at first. I didn't really make any like designated, like, here's me playing Whitesnake song videos. I just kind of sent him pre-existing stuff, and I thought,
Right.
you see if he's even interested before I go through the trouble of like, trying to make videos for him and everything. And I didn't hear anything back at first. And I thought, man, come on, I got to at least be able to get an audition here. I got to be in the conversation. So I happen to just in thinking like who might know David, I thought of my friend Phil Carson, who manages Foreigner, and I had filled in for Mick Jones on really short notice. And Phil and I have a good relationship. He managed Dee Snider, who was in Rock of Ages. So I'd been
Yes.
around Phil enough to kind of call in that favor to
Right.
kind of say, hey, would you be willing to do this? Do you know David Coverdale? And sure enough, he and David were close, and he just suggested, I think you should give this guy a look. And so got me an audition, and the audition went really well.
Incredible. Wow. Well, I mean, what's the most valuable thing that you've learned? And it could be from the entire experience, but from David, in terms of speaking with him or just watching him on stage.
The main thing that sticks with me with him is that he's a very positive guy. He's a lot about like energy, like people's energy, whether or not they're putting off like negative energy or positive energy. And David's a great, not just in looking at other people to determine what they're putting off, but he gives off positive energy all the time. He's just a very positive minded guy, and he's a lot of fun to be around because of that. And I think that that kind of mindset is, I think it's at least partially responsible for what he's been able to achieve.
Yeah.
I mean,
100%.
when you see like how far he's gone, I think it's you just got to like respect all the people that have done so much more in the business than I probably will ever do. I'll never see a climate probably where you can sell millions of albums again and do all the stuff that DC's been able to do. So I have the utmost respect for him with what he's been able to do throughout his career, and I just try and learn from that and respect it rather than ignore it or think it's not relevant. It is. It's all very relevant. All these things you can always learn from everybody you work with. There's always lessons to be learned.
I love that. Real quick, I just wanted to know about the Rock of Ages also, since you brought it up. What was that experience like? Because that must have been a really sort of different thing.
Yeah, being on Broadway was something that I didn't really ever envision when I was 11 playing Black Sabbath songs, but it ended up being something that really changed my life for the better. I mean, when I started Rock of Ages in New York, I had a little bit of money in the bank, and maybe some people were starting to hear about me because I had just joined Night Ranger. But throughout that 6-year period of being able to play that Broadway show and tour with Night Ranger, and then even add in Trans-Siberian Orchestra as it went, that by that 6-year period ended, a lot of people knew who I was, and I had money in the bank and didn't feel like I was struggling and to pay my rent and all that stuff. And so it really did change my life. It was really nice. I hate to say this because it sounds like unappreciative, but the best thing about that gig was that you could take off when you needed to. So that allowed me to stay in Night Ranger throughout that time. It wasn't like, look, you're going to take this Broadway gig and you quit Night Ranger, or stay with Night Ranger and blow this gig off. They fit together.
Yeah.
It was like I was able to take off. So I had a gig like every day. And man, it sounds terrible to say that. Like the best thing about it was I could take off whenever I wanted. But
Well, it's making your own hours though, you know?
well, it allowed me to
So
do
to
the other
speak.
stuff. You know, like for me to be able to go, okay, I need November, December off and go play with TSO. And guess what? January 1, I'll be standing on stage at Rock of Ages as soon as, I mean, that's a remarkable thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like for that 6-year period, I probably played more shows than were days in the year because we were doing 8 a week at Rock of Ages and 8 a week with TSO. And I mean, it was like I was blinking and I was on stage.
You're on a stage every time you open your eyes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh my gosh, insanity. The last question that I had was just a fan question from Alexander. He just wanted to know, during your time with Night Ranger, what was your favorite moment with them or favorite track you guys worked on?
You know, I had a lot of really great memories with those guys. It's hard for me to single any one out. I'd say we had a really good time recording that Somewhere in California album. You know, staying out at Jack Blade's place for what was really like ended up being like 3.5 weeks while Kelly did his drums. We wanted to work on everything together a lot, doing my guitar parts and kind of hanging out while others did their parts. We had a really good time doing that. But I had a lot of great memories with them, you know. In particular with Brad Gillis, I had so much fun with him. We were party buddies, you know, when I joined that band. It's like Brad and I were out painting the town red in whatever town we were in. So I had a great time with him, and he's still a good friend. You know, I still keep in touch with Brad, and we're still, you know, talk all the time. So I had a really good time with those guys. They taught me a lot.
I love that. The Whitesnake Farewell Tour is kicking back off in Dublin, May 10th. Joel, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and have an awesome tour.
Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Take care.
Cheers.
I want to thank Joel for taking the time to join me on episode 251 of the Cassius Morris Show. Super awesome guy, super humble guy, friendly, and definitely someone who just, they don't really care about anything but the music. You know, there's so many artists out here who are wrapped up in the culture, they're wrapped up in the wardrobe, they're wrapped up in, you know, all this other bullshit, the money. This is a guy who just loves playing the guitar. And I sort of get the feeling, the vibe, that whether he was doing it in Whitesnake, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, or a local group somewhere under the radar, I think he would probably be satisfied just making a living playing the guitar. That's sort of the vibe that I get. So thanks to Joel for joining me on the show. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio. There's audio and video every single week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. Until next time, this is Cassius Morris saying, rock on.